going on, everyone? Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth game review series. And today we are going to talk about a new IP that has come out of a studio that is well known for making some of the most popular, some of the most well-known FPS, first-person shooter games ever. I mean, we're talking the classics: Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake. Every single one of these titles ended up becoming giant franchises that lasted long amounts of time. And the fact that they're coming out with a new IP, everyone gets really riled up and excited. Wow, another good thing that's coming out of this company. Hopefully it turns into something, good. So I have some mixed feelings about this game, and I really want to talk about them. So let's get right to it with the Hateful Truth game review of Rage, okay? Now, the first thing that's important to know is I did play Rage on the PC, okay? Because id Software, all their games, I've always played on PC. I mean, Doom, Quake, all the Quakes, Quake 3 Arena, which was huge. And, I really feel that this style of game is made to be played on the PC. Now, some people have found quotes from John Carmack saying, oh, well, really, this was designed for the Xbox 360 and ported to the PC. Whatever he wants to say, he can say. I still felt like I wanted to play this game on the PC, okay? So, what is Rage? How does it pan out? Rage is a game about a post-apocalyptic future, which you've probably, got the gist of before. Something happened, the Earth now, all the technology has been lost, and now there are tribes that are taking over the planet, there are mutants. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounds a lot like the plot of Fallout, a lot like the plot of maybe Mad Max. It's been done before. But Rage really aspires to do something differently by, number one, being a pure FPS. It really wants you to treat the game like a first-person shooter, not like a role-playing game, more like Fallout or anything like that. It really wants to bring you into a first-person shooter world like that. And it does actually try some variety in the gameplay, which is hit or miss, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But for the most part, Rage is going to be the kind of game that anyone who's a hardcore FPS player, you'll like this game, okay? That's really who it's made for. It's not made for people who've never played an FPS game before, that's for sure. But at the same time, it's also it's not hard to jump into, let me put it that way. So what happens? A little bit about the plot. You are someone who awakes out of a cryogenic sleep at the beginning of the game to find out that you've been asleep for over 100 years. There was going to be a meteor shower, basically, that was supposed to destroy the planet's surface, and people have been frozen in these arcs to be revived 100 years later to basically repopulate the planet. But when he wakes up, he realizes that things didn't go as planned. Apparently, something went awry because apparently a lot of the arcs have not woken up. People that have woke up are being oppressed by this authority that seems to be holding everyone down, and everyone's really confused at how did it get this way? How did it become a Mad Max-like state when we had this plan in place that everyone was going to wake out of their cryogenic sleep and be able to go on with their normal lives? So really, over the course of the game, as you do different things in different towns, you will uncover more of the plot and actually find out what happened. And then your ultimate goal is to try to stop this authority that's being oppressive to everyone and wake everyone up on the planet, okay? So, that's it in a nutshell. What does the gameplay entail? Well, like I said, Rage is pretty much a pure FPS game. You're going to be finding weapons, you're going to be buying weapons, you're going to be constantly buying ammo and or crafting ammo, and this is where it does try to do things slightly differently than other hardcore FPS games. It's a combination of so many different kinds of gameplay, okay? You got a little bit of Borderlands in there, you've got a little bit of the Fallout, and then you've also got the hardcore FPS. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, your missions are based on a mission structure similar to Borderlands, where you talk to someone gives you a mission, you have the ability to accept or decline that mission, and then typically what the mission is go out to some dungeon somewhere, some base somewhere, and shoot the living fuck out of a bunch of people, and maybe find an item inside this base, okay? And you can do it, and some missions are story missions, which you have to do to progress the plot. Some missions are side missions, so there are actual optional side missions in this game that will give you certain things. For example, you might get another weapon that you didn't have previously. You might get a recipe to make a really powerful healing item, okay? So the mission structure it's very almost RPG-ish in that sense. Now, the reason this isn't like an RPG, there's no experience points, there's no leveling up, it's nothing like that at all. It's more about just shooting the fuck out of everything. And the way per se that you would level up in this game is to find better weapons and better ammo for those weapons that make them better. And going along with that, let's talk a little bit about the gunplay in the game. Pardon me. You will find a wide variety of weapons in this game, some of which are going to seem very familiar to you, others not so much. So, your typical hand pistol, a standard shotgun, an AK, regular assault rifle gun. Then you'll start finding more futuristic weapons later on in the game, such as the automatic machine gun that actually has a really wide zoom, which is pretty cool. And then some variations on those weapons. As you find alternate ammo, they can become completely different weapons. For example, I had a shotgun that when I found alternate ammo, and also I found a recipe to make alternate ammo for it, it became a grenade launcher, which was fucking awesome. I basically had a shotgun for up close, and then when a big dude came out, a mid-boss or a boss, turned it into the grenade launcher and just blew the fuck out of him. Really cool to be able to do that. And it definitely adds to the variety of the gameplay, because there is a point in the game where, I'd say probably almost up to about halfway through, it gets a little stale, and you're like, okay, so I found all the weapons or whatever, and, I'm kind of getting used to this. And just then is when the game starts to give you the ability to make these alternate kinds of ammo or use these alternate weapons that make the game a lot more interesting. One of the unique, cool weapons in this game is, it's called the wing stick. And it looks like a boomerang almost, only it has three branches to it. I wonder if there's a picture of it on here. Probably not. Figures. Oh wait, here you go. Right on the game disc. That's a wing stick right there, okay? And so what it is you can craft these or find them, and it really becomes a cool alternate weapon for you to use against some of the tougher enemies, especially later in the game. You get a more advanced one, and a lot of the enemies have a lot of armor on them, and it's hard to shoot them, or it takes a lot of rounds to kill them. But if you use the wing stick and you throw it well, boom, headshot. It'll just cut their head right off, and it's an instant death, which is really cool. So you could be running around, running and gunning while throwing wing sticks left and right. And it's really interesting. About halfway through the game, when you unlock some of these abilities and alternate weapons, it gets a lot more fun, okay? Now, the reason I said the game's like Fallout is because the game's all about picking shit up, okay? And as you know, if anyone who's ever played Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, or seen my playthroughs of them, you realize that a lot of the time in Fallout, you're just looking around in rooms and picking up items, okay? This is actually a big part of Rage, and that is a difference between this game and a lot of other FPS games, where in a lot of other FPS games it's just run and gun and that's it. In this game, the more items you find, the better off you're going to do. So for example, I was constantly finding spare items, gas cans, things like that I could sell at a vendor and then buy ingredients to make more powerful ammo for my guns. And I think because I really took my time in the stages looking around for items, pretty much because I'm used to playing Fallout, it was easy for me, it came as second nature. I never really had a problem with ammo or running out of anything in this game. I always had a lot of ammo. I always had the more powerful ammos that I needed to kill whoever I was fighting. Very few times that I actually run out of ammo and have to maybe compensate with another weapon that I really didn't feel like was the optimal weapon for that position in the game. Now, don't get me wrong, you could run through the game and never pick up an item. I think the game would be significantly harder if you do that, okay? So that's the gameplay of Rage. Now, let's talk a little bit about the graphics, because I think the graphics is a big thing that people have been talking about with Rage. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's the deal. Rage, apparently on launch, had a lot of bugs, and not just on PC, but actually on the consoles. And we're not talking, oh, there was a game glitch and a guy got stuck in a wall, which might happen in a game that's large like Rage is, but actual problems with the loading of graphics, okay? Someone actually made a video. He took one step outside of the arc, which is where the game starts when you get thawed out, and he looked left, and everything was untextured and bland, and all of a sudden all the textures loaded looked good. Then he turned right, and everything looked bland again, and then the textures loaded and looked good. And he turned left again, and everything had unloaded and had to reload again. So the game looked awful, and it was just really weird. Why are these? It's called pop-in. Is the major gripe of most people with this game. And it is on. Now, I keep in mind I did play it on PC. My PC is relatively new, so it was able to handle what was going on in the game. But even then, I did experience some popping. No, not anywhere near as much problem as this guy had, you know, when he was playing and he made the video. But it's still odd to me that a game, it's a retail release, that they miss stuff like that. Okay, it's very, very odd that you would miss bugs like that. But that being said, Rage runs at a smooth 60 frames per second the entire time on PC. I don't want to say for sure on consoles that it does that, but I have had several people contact me and say, Phil, when you do review the game, actually mention that Rage does run at a very high frames per second, similar to a Call of Duty game on the console, and you should mention that. So I just want to mention that apparently on console it does run on a solid 60 frames per second, and that's awesome, because for a fast-moving game like this, the more frames per second, the better. You want to be able to see the enemies, where they're moving, you know. It's easier to do reactions, and the animations look amazing because of it. Some of the animations that they put into this game are so complex and interesting. Like, there's some mutants that you fight that are like almost act like monkeys. So they start swinging from the ceiling, they're crawling around, and then they jump off the wall and do a flying drop kick. And you wouldn't expect that in a typical FPS game where people are usually just running on the ground, regular troops running on the ground. There's a lot of cool animations and things that they put into this game that I thought were really neat. The actual quality of the graphics on the PC is amazing, okay? One odd quirk with the PC version, doesn't have the ability on the fly to adjust the graphical levels. Like most PC games, do you want high quality textures? Do you want low quality textures? You know, this game doesn't have that for whatever reason. Now, I did find out you could do it yourself, but you have to hack part of the game, basically. Go into the coding of a file, a configuration file, and change it to go for higher resolution settings. But I played it on default. I played it on whatever the default settings were, and I loved the graphics. They blew me the fuck away. Every person who you talk to in every town looks unique, looks interesting. I said this several times during the playthrough, unlike Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, the women actually look like women and look attractive. In Fallout, you ever notice you talk to the women, they don't really look right, and they're all kind of ugly. So they put some extra time into the character models, into the design of the characters in the game, and everything, even the generic enemy. You'll be fighting a generic tribal enemy, he'll have these elaborate tattoos and shit all over his body, and he'll look just really fucking outstanding. So I have to say, A+. A+ for the graphics. Of course, too bad you had to have pop-in graphical bugs on all the versions of the game. That sucks, but the actual detail of the graphics is fucking amazing, okay? Now, another thing that they do differently in Rage from other typical FPS games is it's not just running around and shooting things. It's actually an open world environment, meaning you don't just play in one place. You start off in a certain settlement. You get missions from these people. Now you have to get from point A to point B, and what ends up happening is there's actually some driving and racing gameplay in the game. And you'll get like a dune buggy or a sand buggy or whatever the hell you want to call it, and you'll drive this around the wasteland to get from point A to point B. You'll be fighting bandits who actually are going to be trying to attack you, and the more bandits that you kill, you'll get actually money and rewards for it back at certain cities. Certain people will usually give you rewards for killing these unlawful bandits trying to hijack people on the road. And the gameplay here of the driving is hit or miss. Like, it's not bad, per se. It's just kind of weird because you're like, I thought this was an FPS game and now I'm driving. And the driving almost kind of feels like some of the gameplay from Mass Effect 2 where you were in the hovercraft for the DLCs, and it's just a little bit out of place. But after a while it settles in pretty well and you realize it kind of does add to the experience to be able to drive around and not just like warp to wherever you're trying to go. It is pretty cool to see that it's a more realistic setting like that. And it'll allow you during the game to drive to different cities. You'll go to 2 or 3 different major cities in the game, get different missions from different people that'll lead you to different places and different settlements. And then, you know, there's a climax where you actually go to the big city and you take on the authority, okay? So, that's interesting that they added that in there, okay? So the last thing I want to talk about, before I really talk about, you know, reviewing that, giving it an actual score, is the multiplayer of Rage. And the multiplayer of Rage is so odd, okay? It's out of place. It seems like the multiplayer and the actual single-player campaign were made by 2 different groups. And I would almost bet that they were. Because the multiplayer really has nothing to do with the single player. I'm not even kidding you. The multiplayer ends up being a couple competitive game modes of the driving gameplay from the game that really are nothing even like the driving from the game. You'll be driving around collecting meteor shards while shooting people, and people will be trying to shoot you and steal your meteor shards, or you have to drive into 3 checkpoints at once while other people are trying to hit the checkpoints before you and steal your points. And it's just like, I didn't know I was going to get Twisted Metal, almost like a Twisted Metal ripoff as the multiplayer of Rage, an FPS game. It just seems very odd and out of place, and I just don't understand it. I only played it a couple times. I played maybe 3 matches. I got bored. I said, I don't want to play this anymore. Like, I didn't buy Twisted Metal. I bought Rage, and I was hoping there would be competitive first-person shooter multiplayer as multiplayer in the game. There is none. There is no first-person shooter competitive multiplayer in Rage, and that is such a weird choice for id, because id is known for, again, for Doom, for Quake. Hell, Quake the Arena is still played competitively online today. It's been out for over a decade. Like, why did they decide not to put competitive multiplayer in their new franchise? It just is so confusing to me. Now, there is an FPS mode of multiplayer in the game, but it's co-op only. You need 2 players to do it, and all it is a series of missions where, they really have nothing to do with the campaign. They kind of reuse locales from the campaign and throw you into a weird situation that's supposed to be like a Legend of the Wasteland, but really it was never spoken of and never had any effect in the single-player campaign. So, for example, there's one, 3 mutants decide to make their home at the Second Chance bar, and you have to stop them. What? Or the one that I actually played was, the Gearheads, which is a gang of tribal people in the game, have invaded the prison. Go get them out and find a weapon while you're there. Like, what? It's so odd. It's so, like, off the wall and so weird and different from what we were expecting to get for the multiplayer of this game. And it does seem pretty difficult. It seems like the enemies here take a lot of damage, and you really have to do some really good teamwork with your co-op partner. You can revive each other to stay alive. But besides that, like, unless you have a friend who bought this game and you want to get every ounce of juice and goodness out of the game, you're probably not even going to bother with the co-op, because it has nothing to do with the real single-player campaign, and it's just pretty bland. You run in, you kill a bunch of generic enemies, you pick up ammo, you kill more generic enemies, you make sure that you help your partner while you're killing more generic enemies, and that's it. And there's a point system, but there's no point to the point system, so I really don't understand what happened here with the multiplayer of this game. I really would have expected competitive multiplayer, and they gave you completely off-the-wall game modes that I don't really think anyone is going to want. So 2 more quick things that I do want to talk about the single-player campaign that I forgot about, and then we'll get to scoring. You're probably going to ask, well, how difficult is the game? And to answer that, I really have to explain the way that the game works with the health system. Like a lot of other games these days, it decides to go with the, you basically have regenerating health, and once you get really low, you're in chance of dying, and the screen goes red, okay? But this game is unique in that, because it's a futuristic setting, they've given you a defibrillator installed in your chest, which means if you get downed in this game, you can revive yourself, but you can only do it every once in a while because the defibrillator needs to recharge. So what happens is this bar appears on the screen, and 2 icons start moving towards the center, and the closer they are to the center, you press a button, and you actually regenerate health, and an electrical shock goes around you, so if you were killed by a mob of enemies, it actually takes out all the enemies around you so that you can basically continue playing and not worry about reviving and dying again instantly because you get mobbed. And it's a pretty unique mechanic of the game. I've never really dealt with anything like that in a game before, where you can self-revive, but at the same time, it kind of makes the game a lot more easy than I think maybe the game makers were intending. Let me put it to you this way. At one point in the game, you can actually get another defibrillator charge. So you can die up to twice and revive yourself, and then if you play it safe and you stay in cover, it regenerates and you can use it again. So it pretty much makes you almost immortal as long as you don't really run head straight into a room full of dudes without any cover and get fucked up and die too quickly repeatedly. And I only died once in this entire game. It's a 10-hour long game for the campaign, just so everyone knows. There are optional things that you can do. There are races that you can do to unlock better vehicles, to unlock upgrades for your vehicles. There's also some side missions that you can do, like I mentioned, to get some better weapons, to get ammo, to get money. And I did some, but I didn't do everything. I did what was required of me to race when I had to, and then I did a couple to get extra money and stuff like that. And then I also did some of the side missions, but not all of them, and it took me about 10 hours to beat this game. Now, from all reports, if you do absolutely every single race and side mission in the game, you'll probably play this for about 15 to 17 hours, okay? And that's pretty damn good in this day and age for a $60 game to get that amount of time out of it. Especially since the multiplayer is kind of odd and most people probably won't like it, still being able to get 15 to 17 hours of gameplay out of the game is good. But, like I said, it's gonna feel easy. It really did feel very easy to me when I was playing this game. There were some times when I thought, oh shit, I gotta get cover. But outside of that, I never really felt, man, this is a challenging part of the game. And for some people, that'll be a good thing. They'll say, oh, well, that's good. I'm the kind of guy that likes to sit down and play and have fun and have a blast. And there's other people that'll say, well, I like games that challenge me and I have to repeatedly replay over and over and over to learn how to beat certain parts of the game. Then this probably isn't your game. Most people will probably go through this game without much difficulty, won't die a lot, and you'll still enjoy it, but there really isn't that much challenge, I'd say, to the game. And really, the part that really got me, the last act of the game, where you know, it's the showdown with the Authority, is actually super easy. I thought I'd be given a weapon, the most powerful weapon in the game is like a chain gun, a plasma chain gun, and I went and bought all this ammo for it, and I was ready. I said, I'm going to save it till the end of the game when I really need it, because I'm sure there's going to be a tough, you know, string there where there'll be like mini bosses or a final boss fight. And none of that happens. You just, you know, at the end of the game is you fight a bunch of guys and then it just ends. It's not even like a climatic ending or anything like that where it's like, wow, that was a cool definitive ending to the game with a huge boss battle and I feel accomplished. It's just kind of like the game ends and you're like, wow, I just won? It was that easy? I can't believe it. I got this big powerful weapon and I didn't even fucking use it. So, yeah, if anything, my major gripe about Rage is that the game is a little bit too easy and, the last act of the game doesn't really, it's too easy to just walk right through it at that point and to demolish everything with the weapons that you have. So, Rage, how do I really feel about it? Well, let me say this. I did enjoy the campaign. When I was playing the single-player campaign, I thought it was a lot of fun. The first half, if you've played FPS games before, you're probably going to get a little bit bored with it, but about halfway through the game, if you stick with it, you're going to find you're going to unlock some of the better weapons, some of the better abilities, the more powerful wing sticks, and you're going to enjoy the game a lot more. At least I did. I started using a variety of ammo, variety of weapons, and the wing sticks, and I had a lot more fun doing it that way. And I did really enjoy the campaign, even though the ending kind of isn't that good, and you know it is kind of easy. It was still pretty fun. The graphics were freaking amazing. The story was interesting. Again, interacting with all these unique characters. I think they put a lot of time into the character development, into the set development. You know, the cities look amazing. It's really fun for your single-player playthrough. And unlike a lot of games where I say the opposite, this is the kind of game that I would actually consider doing a second playthrough using completely different weapons. Like, you can play the game completely differently depending on what weapons you use, and this is the kind of game that I'm not saying I'm going to do it, I'm saying I would have considered doing it if I didn't have other games to play. I might have done, you know, played through this game again. So, you're going to get anywhere from 10 to 15, I'll say 10 to 15 hours of solid gameplay out of the game, and there's replayability. So that's something to be said. On the flip side, I'm completely baffled by the lack of competitive multiplayer. The fact that the multiplayer seems like a bunch of tacked-on, Twisted Metal rip-off driving games, and co-op that really doesn't add anything to the game and is just kind of boring and generic. I'm really, really surprised. And I don't know, like, I thought maybe this game just didn't need multiplayer, you know what I mean? Like, did they really need to tack on those two modes? Does it really add anything? The driving gameplay really doesn't. The co-op gameplay, I could say, if you have a friend who has this game, you'll probably want to do it together. But besides that, like, I don't think anyone would have asked for it. It's not like you could play through the campaign with a friend. It's just these tacked-on little mini missions, as if to give some kind of multiplayer to the game because they felt the game wasn't going to be good enough if they didn't have multiplayer for it. But the lack of competitive multiplayer is, to me, it's a big detriment. When I buy an id Software game, I'm expecting multiplayer, and I didn't get my FPS multiplayer with this game, and I am disappointed in that respect. So, Rage. Solid single-player experience. amazing graphics, really solid gameplay, and a lot of unique, fun weapons as you get through the game, as long as you stick in there and put up with a couple boring first starter hours there. Some really weird design choices and things when it came to the driving, when it came to the multiplayer, but for it is what it is a pretty fun game. For a new IP, I think it's a good start. The ending definitely lends itself that there could be a sequel, and I definitely could see that happening sometime down the road, and I look forward to it. I just have to say, id, put competitive multiplayer in this game, man. Like, this game is screaming for it. With the uniqueness of the weapons and the things going on, this game could have been great with competitive multiplayer. I don't understand why you didn't put it in there. Very confused about that. But the campaign is worth a play, if not two. And being that it's 10 to 15 hours long, it is a pretty decent, amount of gameplay for your 60 bucks. So Rage, I'm going to actually score it a 7.25, okay? It's not good enough to be great. It's almost there. But the fact that the game seems a little bit too on the easy side, that you do blow through certain areas like the last stage, and it's just too easy at that point when you're expecting a final, challenging boss fight or something and nothing ever happens. It doesn't reach that level of greatness. I think they were almost there, and they just fell short. And again, if it had competitive multiplayer, it probably would have added to the quality of the game and the score significantly. But the multiplayer that's there is fluff, and I'm very disappointed in that. So, Rage, pretty good game. If you like FPS games, you'll like it. Definitely give it a play. Play through the campaign once, maybe twice, with a variety of weapons. I say the multiplayer is just worth skipping. Don't even bother with it, unless you have a co-op partner who a friend who you trust and you want to get through it. But I can't give it a grade. I can't give it a rating of like 8 or above because it just doesn't reach it, so it gets a 7.25. Remember, my rating scale is really strict, so for me that means it's good, it's just not great. Okay? So that's it for the Hateful Truth video game review for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I know a lot of people were wondering how I really did feel about Rage, and it's good, but it's not great. So thanks a lot, and I will see you next time for the Hateful Truth game reviews. Thanks.